What if the conversations we've been taught to avoid about sex, desire, and our bodies are actually the ones that set us free? Welcome to Sex Ritual Radio. I'm your host, Rose Heartsong. This is the show where sexuality, spirituality, and vital health meet, and where we explore the conversations most people consider oh so taboo. Each week, I sit down with fascinating voices exploring intimacy, relationships, healing, and human potential. Let's dive in. I am back. This is Rose Heartsong. This is Sex Ritual Radio. I am really excited to dive into a solo episode today. We're going to talk about something that really impacts your life between the sheets and really impacts your pleasure. We're going to be talking about porn, and it's a huge piece of our lives. Whether we watch it or not, it still impacts our society. And we're not going to be talking about it from a place of shame or from fear, but from a more understanding of how it's impacting us, what happens when we learn about sex through the screens, through performances, and from profit instead of from body's presence and deep relationships. So it's not about banning porn. I'm not here to go on a whole rant against porn by any means, but it's really about education on what it is doing to us and through us and the impact of it. The reason I'm talking about this topic, and I was at AVN, which is the Adult Video News. I was there representing a company called Splash Blanket. I work at their expos. It's a super luxurious waterproof blanket. I'm a huge fan. And I've been going to different events across the country the last year, sharing their product and connecting with people at different expos. And this expo, most expos I go to are business to business. So, we're a business and we're wholesaling to sex toy shops. And I think it was in August of last year that was in Tennessee. And that was amazing because there's all these educational talks from different doctors and therapists and sex coaches and sex educators. And I really loved that. It was so inspiring and so activating and such a beautiful community of people. And there were performers too, right? Sex workers really are involved in this community. And again, Adult Video News Awards is it's the Grammy Awards for sex videos or porn videos. And I had an injury in September. I haven't talked about it much on here, but I'm feeling more comfortable, not as tender. So I'm going to start talking about it. I was at a festival and I had somebody fall on top of my head and damage my spine and give me a pretty bad concussion. So during that time, I was making some decisions and choices that I wasn't super clear on. So when I said yes to AVN, I didn't actually do the research to see what it was. So I didn't really know what I was going to until a couple weeks before I went. And I realized that it's a business to consumer event. So they're going to be shoppers there, not business people. And that it was for porn awards. It was in Las Vegas. I knew I was in Las Vegas, but I didn't really think about Las Vegas. I hadn't been there in 10 years. And so I was a little bit anxious getting there. I had an anxiety attack the night before going to Vegas and going to this Adult Video Awards. And I went, and in all honesty, I've had to go to 2 therapy sessions since I've been home, because it really impacted me in a really vulnerable and intense way that I wasn't expecting. And before I dive into that, I kind of want to go back a little bit. So porn hasn't been around for very long, right? I think 1960s or 70s, it started to be in movie theaters. And then the porn industry has grown exponentially, but it's not very long. We haven't been watching porn as a human species. There's magazines and orgies and performances. Ritual theater performances have been around for a lot longer, but porn itself, like opening your phone, looking at a device and going to watch any erotic experience on your phone, is a new experience for our human consciousness. And there's a liberation in it, and there's a trap in it. And I think we went to this liberation phase, and I think we're tipping over into this trap into our nervous systems. And the majority of humans, our ancestors, learned really about sex through touch, observation, relationship, story, and ritual, and being wanted and wanting back. We would learn in different ways, but we didn't learn from a scream. And one of the things that I'm learning is that the more these screens are coming out, the more impact it's having in a really negative way on the body and the nervous system. And it's really impacting people younger and younger. I have some clients right now who are 25 and 28, and they've been sharing with me some experiences with their addiction to porn and how it's really impacting their intimacy and impacting erections. I've had 19-year-old boys reach out to me and say that they're having issues with erections. 25-year-old kids, younger and younger generations are having erectile dysfunction. And usually right now, erectile dysfunction should not really be impacting men until they're like in their late 60s, 70s, 80s. And it should be more from a place of low testosterone, not from younger and younger generations. I will say it's not all from porn. A lot of it has to do with forever chemicals and plastics and soy and hormones, disruptions in cologne, and a lot of the chemicals that we have every day. So there is a health aspect to it. And tonight we're going to be talking about the impact of porn on the nervous system and intimacy. So I want to first state that I learned how to masturbate by watching porn. It was a sexual education for me. I did not know how to masturbate with my hands. I knew how to do it with a sex toy, but I did not know how to come to a climax with my hands without watching porn. So I've used porn as a tool to help educate myself and become more sexually awakened and aware. So there is that aspect of it. It does exist. And also there's a tipping point that's happening right now that I don't think is healthy. And it's not good for our society. It's really impacting our nervous system. Before porn, healthy sexual intimacy, I don't know what life was like in the world before the porn that we have. I am 36, and so I'm this later millennial. And when I was in high school was the first iPhone came out. So there was a huge shift of consciousness where I had the tapes and CDs and DVDs and that whole transition. So our transition with technology in general and where we're going with porn right now with 3D porn and the impacts of AI porn and AI sexting and sex dolls and so forth is going more and more disconnection from intimacy. I am a sex, love, and intimacy coach, primarily focusing on intimacy and connection because people can be having really hot erotic sex, but not connected intimacy-wise, and they're not feeling fulfilled. So in 2025, the global porn and adult entertainment industry is estimated to generate tens of billions of dollars a year, with a projection placing the broader market around $70+ billion annually. Porn is not a side culture. It's a dominant sexual force in our world. And it's not just what it earns, it's what it reproduces. Today's porn industry, this is what I learned in being an AVN, is largely driven by algorithm optimized novelty, escalation of intensity, high performance sexual acts, power dynamics stripped of context. Bodies is content, not beings. What gets rewarded is not intimacy. What gets rewarded is attention and ego and performance. The more clicks, the more shock, the more extremes, and shorter arousal cycles, faster dopamine hits. Think about like scrolling on your phone, right? That's causing dopamine hits, and the porn industry is doing the same thing. And because the content is free, immediate, and private, it's quietly becoming it's the primary forms of sexual education in our culture. Not because we chose it consciously, but because it's a huge industry for money. And if you think about it, the majority of porn, if you go to Google porn in any way, it is the primary porn is stepbrother, stepsister, stepmother, stepfather. So it's intersexual with family members. And that really, in all honesty, I don't want to bring shame, but that grosses me out. I'll just be honest. I'm really about talking about taboo on this show. I don't think that porn is healthy or good for our environment at all. I think it's really quite toxic. When I was at AVN, I became chatting with a male porn star. I was asking him some questions, and I was like, what are your favorite scenes to do? And he said that those were his favorite scenes to do, to perform, like stepmother porn. He was into older women. And I asked him why. And he said it was because it was so taboo. And I really want you to think about that concept, right? What that means when we're watching porn that is encouraging us to have sex with our family members, even though they're step, how that impacts our psyche and how that impacts the societal conditioning in which we live in. Yes, you might not be watching porn on a daily basis or a regular basis, or maybe you've ever seen it a couple times or once. It's still impacting you. If you've seen porn once, it's still ingrained in your brain. And it's still ingrained in somebody else's brain that you know, because somebody is going to be watching it. I'm not here to shame you about watching porn. I learned how to masturbate through porn. Porn is great. I really love porn in the fact that there is an education platform, but it's not regulated the way I wish it was. And the fact that our society is the most turned on by stepbrother, stepsister, stepfather, stepmother, there is a disease in our sexuality. And that is what I stand for here on Sex Ritual Radio with Rose Heartsong. We're talking about porn tonight because it is a huge aspect of our reality. Is that is not thriving sexual intimacy. That is quite toxic. And I want to stand up against that because I do think that you could do porn in a classy way. I think it could be done with beauty and intention and art and magic and inspiration and connection and true intimacy. And hopefully I'll have him as a guest on. I saw a friend of mine at the AVN, and he was coming out with a tantric porn website, which I went and checked out. And it was so beautiful and done so classy. So I'm not talking about anti-sex on screen. I'm talking about the culture in which porn is currently, so that you can be educated and understand what's behind the screen. So many people are learning what sex looks like through porn, what desire should feel like, and what bodies are for, and what dominant and submissive means through porn. There's a performance piece. If you're looking at kink, it is. But before they learn how to communicate desire, before they learn how to create safety in their own bodies, these are what I'm teaching is how do you communicate desire? How do you create safety in your body? How do you read your partner's nervous system? How do you regulate your own nervous system? How do you repair after breakdown with intimacy? How do you stay present instead of performance? And I think that's the thing that I work the most with my clients is helping people get present when erotic eros is present and not perform. And it's so incredibly subconsciously programmed. This performance piece, because of porn, is programmed into our nervous system, even if we haven't really watched it. Like, I went to a kink event on Friday night, and it was a conscious kink or somatic kink experience workshop. And we did flogging and shibari and like conscious, dominant, and submissive for the intention of healing, which is really what I teach. So it was really amazing to see other people doing this. I really felt incredible about it. But we're having this conversation that I'm having with you right now about porn and how it's integrated. And one of the girls there was like, wow, yeah, like I've barely watched porn. And yet, like the few times I've seen it, it's imprinted into my brain a specific performance piece in sex. And so I've had to teach myself how to unprogram performance into sex so that she doesn't perform like a porn star and she's in her arrows. Because when you're actually in your erotic essence, in your erotic arrows, in your pleasure, when you're in it and not performing it or being mentally in it, it's so much hotter and it's so much more fun and it's so much more playful and alive and vibrant and just so total holy yes. Holy yes. We've created this collision. Bodies evolving from like reproduction to erotic play to this exchange for pornographic sex. And porn trains us to be consumers. It trains our nervous systems to be sexually consumptive and to take. And the nervous system and the subconscious brain doesn't know the difference between a fantasy and this is real life. When you watch porn, your brain doesn't know the difference between this is fake and it's not fake. And so a lot of times people are showing up in the bedroom doing sex the way they think they should be doing it through a porn star. But I learned a lot at AVN about behind the scenes. I was at AVN last week in Vegas, adult video news. And it was sad because I saw the deep disconnection in intimacy. It was like the most disconnected in intimacy of any experience I've ever seen, because there was a lot of video girls, like OnlyFans girls or cam girls there. And they're stars, these men that probably haven't had a woman in their bed in a really long time or touched by a woman and had any sort of intimacy whatsoever, that are sitting behind their screens and paying these women to do sexual acts. They are there to see their stars, and they're there to meet them and take photos with them and talk to them and connect with them. And these women are dressed up in lingerie with all these pictures of them in lingerie or nude. And they're there to buy copies of it and get them signed and so forth. And it's kind of this fan experience, but it was just so incredibly heartbreaking to see this kind of desperation. And there was so much desperation, not everyone, but the majority of people. There was a lot of fake plastic surgery, like excessively fake plastic surgery, a lot of insecurity, a lot of dull gray lifelessness in their eyes, and a lot of ego and a lot of performance. And the quality of the people's lives, not everyone, like I said, there's some women who were empowered, and there were some people that were very happy with what they were doing. The male porn star that I was talking to, he seemed very joyful in the career he chose. But at the same time, I asked him, I was like, how many scenes have you done in one day? What's the most amount of scenes you've done in one day? And he said that he got booked for 12, but because of timing, he couldn't do it. So he did 8. And I said, how does one have a boner for that long? How does one do that? How does one have that experience? And they're taking pills to be able to have boners for days. And he said he had to ejaculate every single hour. If he didn't, he would get a migraine headache and have to take a ton of Tylenol. And it was just not this healthy. He was a 29-year-old guy. It's not a healthy lifestyle. It's based on pretend. It's based on taking a lot of lube and sticking it in certain places to look turned on. The experience of porn is not real sex. And yet we are learning sex through porn, thinking that's how we're supposed to be having sex. And that's not how anyone has sex or even enjoys to have sex. There's so many women that are getting hammered by men and so incredibly not happy with it and doesn't feel good because they aren't communicating. Hey, slow down. Let's breathe together. Let's connect. Let's create intimacy with each other. Let's eye gaze. Like, how many times How many people out there are having like deep, intentional eye gazing when they're making love? It doesn't happen, right? It's uncomfortable. And we're learning this through porn, and we're learning performance through porn. And it's making me sad. I'm not gonna lie. It's making me sad, and it's making me driven, and it makes me want to talk a lot more about sex ritual radio. A while ago, okay, so let's go to the more ritual aspect of what we're talking about to show another perspective. Since porn's been only around for, I don't know, tops 50 years, maybe. I didn't look at the year it came out. Maybe I can look it up online. When did porn first start? Let's see what the internet is. Is the late 18th century in France, and then gained popularity in the 19th and 20th centuries. So the performance, when I say porn, I'm not talking about live sexual experiences. I'm talking about video screens having porn, because it's different. Because I go to sex parties, and that is live sexual experiences, but it's a different experience because they're not getting paid to perform an act in exchange for money and to be on a screen. So there's going to be a different performance aspect. Like even when I go on my social media app versus being behind this mic here at the studio, there's a different feeling that comes out of me. There's a different frequency. I show up in a different way when the camera is present. Does my hair look good? Does my makeup look good? All sorts of things. There's that piece. And when you have a camera, it impacts us. It really just does. And it's not authentic, unfortunately. So going back to ritual, like I was saying, so we have theater in our world today, right? You go to the theater, somebody's performing on stage. We've created that into like kink and BDSM scene aspects. We've taken that, adopted it into that place. But before we had theater the way we have today, thousands of years ago, we had something called ritual theater. And I learned this through the Academy of Oracle Arts, through my teacher, Isis Indria, in the concept of ritual theater. Ritual theater, a prayer performance. It's having an intention for a prayer, asking for something or wanting to invoke something, a specific prayer intention, and then everybody coming together with that prayer and creating a performance based on the prayer. It's a performance on stage, but it's infused with prayer and intention and a spiritual practice, which changes the energy and the frequency and the intention behind the performance. And you can feel it in the audience. And if you're interested in trying it or experiencing it, they do ritual theater every year at Lightning in a Bottle Festival in California. And it's starting to make a subtle comeback in California. Ritual theater, this prayer performance. And so they used to do sexual ritual theater where they would have sexual acts. And this was how people could learn about intimacy and sexuality. The expression of sex for those to watch is not a new concept with porn. What I'm saying with porn is the screens and it's the financial gain and the billions and millions of dollars money backing it. And the fact that our subconscious mind has absolutely no idea that it's fake and it's not real, even though our conscious mind does, it's still subconsciously infusing it into our brains. And we're still showing up with intimacy and in the bedroom in a specific way based on the porn that we watch. And this is causing performance anxiety. Vagina owners and vulva owners and cervix owners, it is causing numbness. It's causing dissociation. It's causing shutdown. It's causing not experiencing pleasure through penetration or having only types of orgasms be these vibrator type orgasms, which if that's the only way you can orgasm, then I really am happy for you. But there's so much more to explore and learn. And I'm not here to try to shame that. I really want you to have pleasure. And this porn aspect is having us become numb and disconnected from our nipples, from our vulvas, from our vaginas, from the I know because I'm in a Facebook group that's part of Yoni Pleasure Palace, which is the owner of Splash Blanket, which I'm a huge fan of. There's 30,000 women in there, and they're sharing over and over again all these problems with numbness and disconnection and not being able to have orgasms through penetration. And then they're using these tools, these crystal dildos and these yoni eggs that are made out of crystal, and they're using them and having a relationship with their pleasure. They're having a relationship with their vaginas and their vulvas. And in that relationship, they're reawakening their bodies and they're having pleasure. I think I read one the other day that a woman was talking. I think I even took a screenshot of it. Let me see if I can find it. A woman was talking about how she had the first orgasm. Here it is. Yes. I am so excited. I have pretty much had a sexless marriage for 10 years because my husband and I had mismatched in our libido. I was a severe sexual dysfunction. I had a severe sexual dysfunction and wasn't able to achieve an orgasm or feel sexual sensations during sex. My psychologist recommended I focus on building my body up with self-pleasure. It's been 4 months since having orgasms with self-pleasure, and I knew my body was ready. This week, my husband and I had sex twice, and I experienced body sensations and body orgasms. It's been 10 years. So I think a lot with the porn for female bodies or vulva-owning bodies is like there's a numbness and a disconnection and a lack of feeling safe in the body because they're performing pleasure and then they're receiving sexual acts that don't feel right, but they don't know how to communicate it. They feel shame almost in communicating it because that's not how porn stars are. They just like experiencing pleasure, but that's a performance, right? Porn stars are performing. They're not even having real orgasms. And in all honesty, I watched some of the top porn awards that won the awards, and the women weren't even showing that much pleasure. Like they're not even pretending to be in pleasure. It was more, I didn't even feel any pleasure. I didn't even feel turned on at all watching it because I didn't feel excitement. There's a more numbness and dissociation happening in the porn industry. And then for the men or the penis owners, there's a anxiety loop that goes on in the brain. And in that anxiety loop, they have this expectation of performing the same way that the man in the porn video does. And they're supposed to have the stamina and the erection and all of the things that they have are supposed to be a specific way based on that porn star. And because they're not being what that porn star is, they get insecure. And then that insecurity creates erectile dysfunction. They can't get hard. And then when they don't get hard, this massive amounts of shame washes over them. And then that shame causes anxiety in their brain. And then that anxiety keeps the anxiety for the shame and the erectile dysfunction. And it becomes this awful loop, and it almost can become a panic attack. I'm not trying to fault anyone. I really just want you guys to see it from a different perspective and understand that this is a pattern that you've learned from a nervous system programming, from watching something that's fake, that isn't actually landed in reality. And yet we're learning from it and it's not working and it's not creating fulfillment. And there's a different way. I'll talk about that different way, I promise. But I really am dissecting and understanding the reality of what is and why it's not working the way it's not working, so that we can transition into something that works. So then, like I said, not trying to shame ya. And when men have anxiety, women get frustrated and then that frustration causes more anxiety. And then the anxiety, it just becomes this mess. And think about it though. If you really think about it, ladies, a man's erection is really just for our pleasure, because a man can have an orgasm with a non-erect penis. So there is some beauty in that. They really do want to pleasure us and support us. It's not working for sexuality. There was a liberation of sex, right? Porn created a liberation and it helped to bring sex out into the world more. But now it's going more and more towards AI and 3D glasses porn and like kind of programming our brains away from true intimacy and pleasure. And the feeling of the space at AVN, the energy of the space felt really disconnected, very egotistical, very performance, disassociation. There's a huge difference between sexual imagery and erotic presence, and we can feel it. There's a feeling. You can feel like a woman who is just alive in her sexual and erotic essence, and she just oozes it from the inside out. And then there's a feeling of the most gorgeous woman in the world, but she's insecure, and you can feel that. And there's like this shrinking in her, right? And their eyes of a lot of people and the bodies and their nervous systems, there's a lot of anxiety and numbness and dissociation happening. And honestly, it was really hard on my nervous system and really hard for me to witness and see it. But I also got curious and I wanted to learn. I'm not here to judge the people who are doing this work. I'm just observing a system that's not effectively supporting intimacy in our modern day world. And I'm naming the cost of the commodification of sex. And it really just felt overstimulated and undernourished. We didn't have a lot of nourishment and deep intimacy or connection. And I think that we're really missing that as a culture, even more and more, especially since COVID. Like, we've become farther and farther away. And even the younger generations, they're not having sex. They're sitting behind their computers, talking to these cam girls, are swiping on social or on dating apps, but not actually meeting up. They don't know how to socially connect. They're using ChatGPT on how to talk to girls, and we're just losing each other. Let's connect the dots. Okay. So porn shapes sexual expectations. These sexual expectations create difficulty with arousal in their bodies when it comes to connection with real people and real bodies. Because a lot of times when you're watching porn, you're self-pleasuring. And so your nervous system's connected to pleasure with self, but not from a place of touching all over an erotic empowerment, but it's almost like you're being submissive to the porn itself and submissive to your own sexual energy. And there's a confusion between that and true intimacy. And then there's a loss of erotic literacy. There's a difference between like submissive to your sexual energy and erotic literacy, and really having the art of connecting with a body and connecting with like erotic flow and turning somebody on and learning how to talk about that. And then this creates a lot of anxiety, performance pressure, and numbness. I'm not saying porn ruins sex. I'm saying that unconscious porn use replaces relational learning. There's a really awesome website called Beducated, I think it is. And they have porn-like videos that teach you how to give a blowjob and how to do oral and how to have experiences sexually that include nudity and sexual performances. And it's about education. It's teaching you how to do it. It's not about performance. And there's a huge difference between that. So I'm not saying all porn is bad, but I am saying that having fantasies about having sex with your stepmom or stepbrother or stepson or whatever, that is not working, and it's toxic and it's not good. There is another way. One of that other ways is to quit watching porn. Even if you watched it, quit with the chat girls, quit with all of that. When I work with my clients, that's the first thing we work on. And then start connecting with your own body, right? Start touching. You can touch your chest. You can touch your shoulders. You can touch your arms. You can touch the insides of your thighs, putting pressure on yourself. Play with your scalp. You can play with your own neck. You can really just seduce yourself and really connect with your own body and slowly. And you can resensitize the body. So if you're somebody who can only get off by watching porn and using a vibrator or through virtual stimulation, my invitation for you is to shut off all that and get rid of the vibrators and slow down and take the goal of having an orgasm outside of the equation and really start having like intimacy and a physical connective depth with yourself that have nothing to do with orgasm. Really learning how to touch yourself in a way that feels fulfilling and inspiring, and slowing desire using breath work with your body and with desire, and relearn presence. Like, breath work is the most powerful way I love Wim Hof. Wim Hof is one of the best ways. You can go on YouTube and just click in Wim Hof and do that every day. Transformational, especially if you're dealing with anxiety, depression, you don't have any hope, you feel overwhelmed, you have performance anxiety. Wim Hof is a life changer. Relearning presence through connecting with nature, getting off your phone, not scrolling late at night. Something I've been wanting to do this week actually to connect with presence is get back into crocheting and stopping scrolling and spending more time in nature, getting present to what is around you. Like checking in and looking around the room and seeing what colors are there or what gravity feels like underneath your bum or from the weight of the chair or the weight of your body or the weight of your feet on the ground. And then you can bring fantasy into your relationship, right? You can create erotic scenes and erotic play through real life and not through outsourcing to algorithms that are creating clickbait that create more money. What kind of intimacy and sex do you want to be having that makes you feel more alive afterwards, not drained or disconnected or fear-based or shut down or numb and disassociated, but like really what makes you feel alive? And what kind of desire feels nurturing for you and not draining? These are the things you want to start asking. What do you want? What do you want to try? And if you're having a hard time connecting with another person, I'm not telling you to stop masturbating, right? I think self-pleasure is super important, but it's about retraining your nervous system to find pleasure in your body through breath, through nature, through eating your dinner, through getting dressed, through listening to music, and not just like the goal of having an orgasm as fast as you can so you can release the pressure and move on with your day. And that kind of turns into this cycle of addiction. And unfortunately, I think the younger generations are having less and less sex. People aren't like having more sex right now. We're having less sex with this whole AI porn thing. It's like disconnecting us even more. So I think like the future of sexuality is not less sex. It's really about less disconnection. And it's not about purity culture. Right? I'm not telling you not to do that. It's about being present. And so if you're having a hard time connecting with another person, my invitation for you is really to deepen into presence within yourself and your own nervous system. Learn about somatic healing therapies, learn about nervous system regulation, learn how you can feel empowered in the present moment and empowered with yourself. Journal, read books, grow, listen to chanting, meditation, breathwork, yoga. Find something that can really nourish you and not have your body in so much fight and flight, but be in rest and relax. This is really what I'm teaching underneath all of it. We talk a lot about sex, but underneath it is nervous system regulation. And when you're able to be present and connected in the nervous system, you can experience deep levels of erotic intimacy and erotic depth that you couldn't do from watching porn or scrolling. And the most radical thing we can do right now is learn how to feel. It's the most important thing we can do. And the way to do that is to quit watching porn, because it's going to get you into this mental program. And that mental program is not working. It's not working with intimacy. It's not working in the bedroom. And it's creating a lot of toxicity in our culture and a lot of sadness, unfortunately. And so I really encourage you guys to start. Okay, some of the ways that I love to work with regulation is I do red light therapy. So I don't do blue lights at night. That helps with the nervous system, helps you sleep better. Eating really healthy foods, drinking more water, getting more sleep, recharging, not being on your phone as much, spending time in nature. If you're near the ocean, getting in the ocean, touching the ocean. Breath work is the most powerful thing you can do. If you don't have a practice, I actually just learned, because I do have an impact from my brain from the injury that I just went through a couple months ago. I just learned about I just started this practice, so I'll share with you guys as I grow and learn on it. It's actually helps to rewire the brain and help you focus and be more present. So there's so many different ways of meditation and prayer and ritual, and there's just so many ways. I just could go on and on all night about how to regulate the nervous system. And I've done a lot of different things, but really need to focus on that and presence. And that is really the root of the reprogramming of getting into pleasure and not sourcing outside of yourself, but sourcing inside of yourself. And when you deepen into your own erotic intimacy and you deepen into your own self pleasure and you deepen into your own inner stability and sexual sovereignty and owning your sexual energy, that is what's attractive, and that's what can magnetize somebody in, and that depth is what can create that intimacy. And if you are in a marriage or in a relationship and you want to deepen that, a simple tool you can do to really anchor your guys' nervous systems together is sit across from each other and eye gaze and do rotational breathing. They breathe in, you breathe out, and as they breathe out, you breathe in, and you're taking in their essence and their aura, and it helps you slow down and bring presence in. And that eye gazing, don't do that without any sexual erotic energy, not when you're turned on, but just like to really deepen your connection. And when you do that as a practice on a regular basis, you're rewiring your nervous system to be present and connected with that person and to breathe with them in a way that makes the energy flow between you, and you can bring that deep intimacy together. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope I really wasn't here to shame the porn industry. I just was helping you understand what's going on, because this is something I've been diving into and digging into and understanding. And I know that I don't want to experience deep pleasure through fake pleasure. And this performance piece, as we evolve, working with a therapist, working with a sex coach, or educated, or an online education platform that teaches you about good sexuality and tantra, and these conscious pleasure experiences are going to be super supportive for you on your journey. And if you want, please reach out to me at Rose Heartsong on Instagram. We can have a conversation about this. I'm here to support you on this journey, and it would be absolutely a pleasure to have that connection with you. I hope you guys are having the most beautiful night ever. And thank you for listening to Sex Ritual Radio with Rose Heartsong.